Today we talk about the possibilities and challenges of getting pregnant at age 45 and above. Is it achievable or are the odds against it?
I'm Dr. Mark Amols, and this is Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday.
At least once or twice a year, I come across an ethical dilemma. I have a patient who comes to my office who is about 45 or older, and they want to get pregnant. And I get it. Why wouldn't you? I mean, if you watch TV, you watch the movie stars, maybe even your friends, they're getting pregnant at 45 and above. So there's no doubt that you should be able to get pregnant. And the ethical dilemma for me is that they come to me and they say, you got my friend pregnant who's 48 and I'm only 45. So why can't you get me pregnant? I don't understand what's going on here. And I've run into a bit of an ethical dilemma because what they don't know is that their friend used donor eggs. And due to HIPAA laws, I can't tell them that their friend used donor eggs. But on the same token, how do I keep telling them that they can't get pregnant with their own eggs? But in their mind, I got their friend pregnant with their own eggs at a later age. And so it's a very tight rope I have to walk to be able to explain to them that it's very, very difficult. Statistically speaking, if you have a friend who has got pregnant at 45 and above, using fertility treatment is either one of two ways. They either had frozen eggs that were stored in the past and are using them, or they used donor eggs. There is very, very little chance that they got pregnant with their own eggs. To give you an idea, in the 10 years we've been practicing, and I've seen lots of patients who are older, and I'm never against letting them try. Only twice have we ever had women get embryos that were euploid, meaning genetically normal, at age 45 and greater. One was at age 45, the other was at age 48. I had one patient who got pregnant at age 45, but technically her embryos were removed at age 44. The person who put the embryo back at age 45 unfortunately did not have success. The person who is age 48 has still not put the embryo back. She needs a surrogate. And to give perspective, we see many, many women who are over age 40 because it's something that we're able to do very well. But there's a limit. When you get to about 44, 45, things become very difficult. The question is, how difficult? Statistically speaking, the chances of getting pregnant on your own, just naturally per month, at age 45 is 1%. That means a 1% chance per month of actually coming away with a live birth. Using these same statistics, your cumulative chance over 12 months would be 11.4%. Now, cumulative means if you take all the months of 1% and add them up over 12 months, it'd be 11.4%. I know it seems like it should be 12%, but it's not, because there's only 100% total. So you keep losing a portion as you keep cumulatively adding them together. But the point is, even after 1 year, your chances are only 11.4%. Now, that's not zero. And I don't want people to think it can't happen. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is statistically, it's very difficult. And this is where the concern comes with IVF. It's easy to think of IVF as this amazing procedure that can just fix anything. But IVF is very limited. And one of the things that's very limiting in IVF is that it depends on how many eggs you have, and also depends on if you can get a euploid embryo. So let's start with the number of eggs. Most women by age 45 can usually only produce about 1 to 3 eggs at most. So statistically speaking, if we know that only about 5% or less of the eggs are genetically normal, it's going to take somewhere around 20, 40 eggs to be able to get one euploid embryo. So if you're only making 2 or 3 eggs per month, then that means it will take somewhere around 10 to 20 IVF cycles, which is just not realistic. Now, if you're someone who can make more eggs, which, by the way, the person with 48 was able to, then there's a higher probability with getting enough eggs that you can eventually get to that euploid embryo. But here's the interesting thing about probability. It doesn't make sense in small sample sizes, meaning, as I've talked about before, flipping a quarter 5 times isn't going to give you 2 heads and 3 tails, or 3 heads and 2 tails. You could get 5 heads in a row, and probability is perfect. And that's because it's a small sample size. Flip that same quarter 100 times and you'll see it's a normal quarter. It's just that the probability didn't show up in the small sample size. I see this all the time when people have kids. They'll say, oh, my husband only makes boys because we've had 5 boys and never had a girl. But I say to them, well, flip a quarter 5 times. Is the quarter abnormal? No. It just seems like there's a problem because we don't see statistics the way statistics really are. We feel it should be every time, but it doesn't work that way with probability. Additionally, as humans, we're not very good with probability. There's a very common theorem called the Monty Hall theorem that most people cannot figure out because, again, as humans, we don't see these small differences. We see large differences. So when someone says 1 in a million, we're like, okay, that's a low chance. So when it's a large amount, we're able to see it easier. But when it's a smaller amount, we don't really notice it as much. So for example, in this Monty Hall theorem, you have 3 doors, and I tell you that there's a prize behind one of the doors. Let's call the doors 1, 2, and 3. And then I say to you, you can pick a door. And let's say you choose door number 1. Then I tell you, well, I can let you know it's not behind door number 2. So I then remove door number 2, and now you know it's between door number 1 and door number 3. And then I give you a chance. I say to you, you have a choice. You can keep the door you picked, or you can now choose to pick the other door. So what do you think? Do you think you should change doors? Or do you feel that the chances are the same? I mean, there's only 2 doors, so it's 50-50, correct? Well, of those of you who have never heard this, or those of you who are mathematicians, you know that you are better off switching doors. And by switching doors, you increase your chances of being right by about 16%. Now, for those of you who don't believe me, go on Google and look up Monty Hall theorem. It's not easy to see because when we look at statistics, again, it's a small difference, and we don't realize that not everything is dependent or independent. And so in the Monty Hall theorem, what most people don't realize is they had a higher chance of being wrong the first pick. So after we remove a door, the chances that they were wrong were higher, so switching makes more sense. But most people see it as an independent decision that's just 50-50. So what was the point of all that? Well, the point was explained that when you are 45 and above, it doesn't matter what clinic you're at, this all comes down to chance. There is no one who is more fertile, really, at 45 than another person. They may make more eggs and may give them a better chance of getting pregnant. But technically, they're all equal in fertility, meaning it's still going to be 5% or less of each egg will ever be a euploid embryo. So this becomes a number game. And since it's a number game, you are better off going somewhere where you can afford to do multiple cycles than going somewhere just doing one cycle. I don't care if you go to the best clinic in the universe. You are always going to have a better chance at 45 and above by doing multiple cycles versus just doing one cycle. And even if that clinic isn't the best clinic in the world, technically speaking, your chances are better if you can do more cycles at that clinic because this is a numbers game. Now, to be honest, I don't encourage people at 45 and above to use their own eggs. I'm not saying I won't try. Matter of fact, I'm actually ecstatic if they are, but I tell them right from the beginning, very few people can ever get pregnant with their own eggs at 45 or above. And then I say, let's test you to see where you're at. I tell them no matter what, this is going to be an uphill battle. It's going to take multiple cycles to get there. And the people who happen to have amazing insurance, great. They can do this. Financially, it's not tough. And if they can emotionally hold out and keep doing it, they will eventually get that normal embryo. I can't guarantee that normal embryo will end in a live birth, but at least they'll get a chance. But for people who don't have insurance, statistically speaking, this could take multiple cycles. And so instead of doing IVF, really, your best chances are using donor eggs. Now, obviously, it'd be hopeful that if maybe you're more mature and you haven't found a partner, you'd freeze eggs by now. And again, that's really the point of this podcast. People really do not get pregnant after 44. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I can assure you it does not happen often. Matter of fact, even SART and the CDC don't even record for people over 44. It's just one category and up because it's just so rare. They didn't have to make a category from 44 to 46, 46 to 48 because it just doesn't happen. So instead, it just says above. But the point is, if you are frustrated because you know about a friend who got pregnant at age 45 or above, or you saw a movie star or someone else get pregnant at 45 or above, keep in mind, statistically speaking, they either froze eggs when they're younger and they're using frozen eggs, or they are using donor eggs. There's nothing wrong with you. If you are not getting pregnant at age 45 and above, it's because that's natural. And then what they did was something different. And so don't feel frustrated that there's something wrong with you. It's just technically the people aren't being honest who end up getting pregnant when they're 45 or above. Hopefully this episode was helpful for some of you who are in this situation. Maybe you know a family member who's in this situation or a friend, and let them know that this podcast about this episode exists. It may be able to help them get past that hump of thinking, why can't I get pregnant but my friend can? Because it's tough. We cannot tell them that their friend did something else. And so for them, it's very hard to understand why they can't get there, but someone else could. And they'll literally say to you, I'm healthier than them. I don't understand. And it's so tough as a physician because you want to tell them, but you know you can't. And so that was the purpose of this podcast, is to make sure people know it really is almost impossible. And so it doesn't mean anyone can't try. If you happen to have the funds or the insurance to do it, that's amazing. I really pray that works for you. But for most people, it really is not going to be physically possible, even emotionally possible to go through that many cycles. And statistically speaking, the chances are very low of even working. And so for most patients, 44 and above, being 45 and above, I'd recommend, if you don't have frozen eggs, using donor eggs. Again, you can try, but just understand, statistically speaking, the odds are against you. As always, I greatly appreciate everyone who listens to this podcast. Hopefully this was helpful to you or a friend. If you love this podcast, tell your friends about us. Give us a 5-star review on your favorite medium. But most of all, as I keep saying, please keep coming back. I love doing these. In fact, I'm leaving this week to go to California and recorded this podcast early so it can still go out while I'm on vacation. I look forward to talking to you again next week on Talk About Fertility Tuesday.